This is Josh Reeves, and you're listening to the Mile High Church podcast. All of us at some point in our lives are touched by grief. Dr. Alan Wolfelt is one of the premier speakers on grief in the entire country, and he's going to be speaking on understanding your grief Wednesday, April 30th, 7 to 9 p.m. There's a workshop happening the next day if you're local, but you can get tickets to watch online. Check out milehighchurch.org for more information.
The message this morning is living the Christ life. Living the Christ life, and to be honest with you, in keeping the historical Jesus in mind, that does not sound like my ideal spring break. To be a Jew in the first century under Roman rule, to experience rejection and even betrayal from friends, family, followers, students, your fellow Jews, and the authorities. And of course, to be crucified. I don't want to have any of those experiences. And yet, someone who had those experiences became the greatest spiritual teacher who ever lived. It says something about you and your resilience. And in our teaching here, we believe that Jesus fully embodied and was the Christ. And yet the Christ is so much more. The Christ is an ever-present reality, a higher consciousness, the highest way of thinking, seeing, feeling, and being, and it is available to each and every one of us. This was Jesus' essential teaching, that this material reality that all of us are experiencing is not all there is. Not that it's not real, but it's not all there is. There is more. There is another reality. And the work of the human life and of the Christ life is entwining them together. Inner and outer. The temporal and the eternal. Heaven and earth. Heaven, or the kingdom of heaven as Jesus called it, didn't refer to an afterlife, but to indeed that ever-present reality, something that we can weave into this life. How do we enter the kingdom of heaven? Jesus says, you must be reborn of the Spirit. We must become aware of this reality we do not see and yet is more real than anything, and do the hard, laborious work of weaving an awareness of the inner and the outer, of the eternal in the temporary, of being a presence for heaven on earth. Ernest Holmes, our founder, believed that Jesus was the greatest spiritual teacher of all time, and he shares about him. Jesus worked in a different kind of laboratory. He understood a different set of laws, and because he used these laws, a power was delivered to him that has amazed the world. It is our purpose to rediscover these laws, find out how they work, and apply them for every legitimate purpose, then reap the benefit for ourselves and for others. We are all called to live the Christ life. It is not the easy life. It is the courageous life, which begins with accepting the incredible Spirit in you and making the choice to live from that Spirit. Jesus' essential teaching was about bringing heaven and earth together. The essential practice he developed and used, which was new to all of humanity at the time, he called forgiveness. Forgiveness. God, why do they make it so hard? And forgiveness for Jesus could be seen at the most basic level of no longer blaming someone for their mistakes. But for Jesus, it was really how to respond from the Spirit in the midst of the material. It was about choosing a higher way. It was about literally practicing the love of God for anyone around you. It was the perfect response to rationality, to the common sense, to the laws of karma in everyday life. If someone hits you on the cheek, he says, show them the other. Someone steals one thing from you, offer them something else. If a person arrests you and makes you go a mile with them, be willing to go 2. Now, if someone slapped you on the cheek and you hit them back, I would understand. If someone stole from you and you called the police, I get it. I'd encourage you to do just that. If you were arrested without justice or reasoning, I'd be mad too. I think Jesus would share that same perspective, but what he's pointing out is that there's a higher way. There's a greater way to respond, not with naivete, but with a powerful love, a powerful force of love that is God's Spirit and grace in action. I'd like to share with you this morning about a hero of forgiveness. This is someone who's experienced betrayals and negativity in their life. They've been discounted and at times unseen, unappreciated. They've had their hearts broken, sometimes by the same persons, again and again. And yet they continue to do everything they can to take the higher path, to practice kindness instead of divisiveness and blame, to choose love over panic or repressed shame. And that hero, I want to argue, is you. It's you. I'm going to challenge you and say that you are much more forgiving than you know you are. And that even if you're sitting in your seat today thinking, gosh, I haven't done enough to forgive so-and-so, I think the answer isn't that you haven't forgiven, you've just forgotten. You've forgotten how much work you've done on yourself. You've perhaps forgotten for all the stuff that you may be holding on to, all that you in truth have let go of through all of these years. To stay committed to that truth of the human spirit in you, choosing to live in alignment, not with spite, but with spirit. In this teaching, we love to say that it's meditation and prayer that helps us cultivate a consciousness of divinity in our lives so that we can begin to see it manifesting and expressing itself everywhere. The truth is, sometimes it's the challenges of life that break us open into living the Christ life. Sometimes forgiveness isn't even a choice. We've come to learn that living in accordance with the back and forth, the stories, the fighting, the conflicts, the inner turmoil, that we have no choice but to turn to that light, to surrender, and hopefully as a byproduct of that surrender, experience some grace by simply saying there is a reality greater than the one that I experience. We can run on spite for a long time, but in the end we realize that spirit is the only thing we can truly live an authentic life living from. Spite or spirit? Just mix a couple words around. Which one are you living from? There is a hero of unforgiveness I want to talk a little bit about today. It's my favorite comedy show is Curb Your Enthusiasm, created by the great Larry David, who also co-created Seinfeld. And his nonstop practice is spite. And I love Larry David and I love Curb Your Enthusiasm because maybe like you, he says all of the things that I think from time to time but would never dare say. But he lives from spite. And in one particular episode, he enters Mocha Joe's coffee shop, owned by Mocha Joe, and immediately starts complaining about things because he's saying whatever's on his mind. So he orders a scone, and it's kind of soft. Mocha Joe, this is more like a muffin than a scone. And you can see Mocha Joe get annoyed. He sits down at his table, and it's wobbly. Mocha Joe, you can't have a successful coffee shop with a wobbly table. Mocha Joe's still annoyed, and then finally, the coffee is not warm enough for Larry. And he complains to Mocha Joe, who insists it's hot enough, and Larry puts his nose right into the coffee to prove otherwise. And Mocha Joe is so upset that he throws him out of the shop. Get out of my store. And Larry does what any of us would do, left with the means to be able to do so. He sees that the shop area right next door is available, and he begins the hard work of opening Latte Larry's. A pure 100% spite shop. We have a picture of Latte Larry's here. A hot cup of spite. Now, Larry David plays himself, but he's a character, and the truth is that our spite will eventually burn us out. Anyone here ever make a choice out of spite? Anyone here ever have a spite relationship? Anyone here ever take a spite job? Buy a spite car? Some of us are living spite lives. There's something attractive about spite. There's something that kind of tells us that we can feel better if we're practicing that blame and living out of a place of spite. But eventually it breaks away, and all that we're left with is that spirit of generosity, that spirit of forgiveness, that spirit that too many of ourselves have buried our true selves so deep that we lose touch with it. We begin to think it's fantastical, that spite is the only way. But there is a greater spirit and a greater reality that we can choose that allows us to live the Christ life. I want to share with you 3 unique ways of living the Christ life, and 3 powerful, unique individuals who, in my opinion, embodied the Christ life. And the first thing that I want to share for living the Christ life is to let God love you. Let God love you, or let God love through you. Unforgiveness isn't keeping love from anyone else. It's keeping the love of God out of your own heart. When we get in spite and we get in blame, we're keeping that love of God out of our own heart. When the truth is that divine reality is all around us. Brother Lawrence, a great French Catholic monk of the 17th century, he coined an incredible term. He called it practicing the presence of God. Practicing the presence of God. Think about that for a moment, what that means to you, to practice the presence of God. For me, it is to be in reverence of the sacred in any activity that I'm engaged in. Moving of the hand, thinking of divine qualities, moving through sacred memories, just basking and beholding nature from the point of view of the divine. This is what practicing the presence of God means to me. And for Brother Lawrence, he had a powerful experience because I think he was associating God with his prayer work and with the church, but he had an experience that helped him to realize that the divine is everywhere. He shared, "In the winter I saw a tree stripped of its leaves, and I knew that within a little time the leaves would be renewed, and that afterwards the flowers and the fruit would appear. From this I received a high view of the power and providence of God, which has never since departed from my soul. The view I grasped that day set me completely loose from the world and kindled in me such a love for God that I cannot tell whether it has increased during the more than 40 years since that time." Another basic way of practicing the presence of God is just being aware of what you would consider the divine qualities. That when you practice kindness, you're practicing the presence of God. When you practice generosity, you're practicing the presence of God. When you're practicing love, you're practicing the love of God. In my experience, back to forgiveness, for me, it's never about loving someone again myself. It's refusing to in any way keep God's love from someone else. It's getting back in the flow of that spirit and that grace. Brother Lawrence said that life should be a nonstop conversation with God. Fully in reciprocity, having the best rapport. And by practicing that presence, we build that rapport. And we begin to hear the voice of the divine in all sorts of interesting places. I was at the airport a few weeks ago, just about to board the plane, and you know we have these boarding passes on our phones now. And I'm stewing. I'm going through some challenges, and I'm doing what most of us do when we're facing challenges. What did I do to make this happen? What could I have done to make this not happen? How am I to blame for this experience that I'm walking through? Well, I'm the only one, huh? And I get up to the stewardess who's boarding the plane, and my boarding pass isn't scanning. She continues to do, and I say, I'm so sorry, let me try to do that thing with my fingers that only works when you're not trying to do it to get it to blow up. And she whispers to me, it's not you. It's not you. It's just the glare of the sun rising through the window. And I said, bless your heart. And I got on the plane, and although I haven't fully embodied the message, I heard it. What a painful thing to recognize how much we may be missing out on the voice of the sacred in our lives. That voice that tells you how forgiving you are, how good you are, how well-intentioned you are, that you are a precious expression of something beloved and eternal. So let God love you and let God love through you and begin to realize that you have no idea how the divine speaks through you to so many different people at so many different times. That's how important you are. Another way to live the Christ life is to regularly declare the primacy of spirit. That life is essentially the spirit. And the material world, although important, is temporal. It's not as real as the spiritual truth. Someone else in history who I admire and embodied the Christ life in pretty amazing ways was Mary Baker Eddy, the founder of Christian Science. Mary Baker Eddy, the first woman in the United States to form a religion. She was pretty rigid and a little too fundamental for my spiritual taste, but I think it's what the kids would call badass, a woman making that happen, right? And Eddy wrote something that she called the Christian Science Statement of Being, and I want to share it with you. It goes like this. There is no life, truth, intelligence, nor substance in matter. All is infinite mind and its infinite manifestation. For God is all in all. Spirit is a mortal truth. Matter is mortal error. Spirit is the real and eternal. Matter is the unreal and temporal. Spirit is God, and man is his image and likeness. Therefore, man is not material, he is spiritual. And I'm not a big fan of denying the material world because we know where denial can lead us. However, if we can look at something and say, this is not the only reality it is, we can welcome in that renewed reality. Spirit, I know that this experience I am having is not the only reality there is. That there is a greater reality that you are present with now and revealing through all of my circumstances. So I let this tired story go. I let this version of myself I keep insisting on that is not good enough go. I let my worry, my panic, my procrastination, all of these layers of not be torn asunder because they are not real in the truth of what you are. And I allow the truth of Spirit to reveal itself through me, as me, right here and right now. We can look at any circumstance, self-image we have about ourselves, story that we are caught up in, perhaps even drowning in, and say it's not real. There's a greater reality. That's the amazing nature of the Christ life, is when we can know that truth, it can begin to reveal itself. It may be through a stewardess at a check-in line. It may not show up exactly as you want it, but it will begin to reveal itself. All we have to do is what Jesus teaches us to do, is to reground ourselves in the knowledge of the kingdom of heaven. He used that term, kingdom of heaven, for a reason, and it had somewhat of political purposes. It was the recognition that Roman rule was pretty crazy, and give unto Caesar's what is Caesar's. I think for a lot of us, we get really caught up today, arguably very understandably, in the nature of our government and in the nature of the media. And it's so important to do what Jesus said, to give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Doesn't mean don't be concerned about the government. Doesn't mean don't be a good citizen and vote. But don't allow yourself to be possessed by what you may view as chaos or uncertainty or whatever it is going on around you. Pay attention to it, respond to it, as I'll be talking about someone who did that in the next talking point, but ground yourself in that spiritual reality, because that other one is only going to lead you into panic and spite and to not bringing forth that consciousness that you want to see in the world and all around you. Remember that primacy of spirit. And lastly, keep your light burning. Your light is the most precious thing about you. It speaks in silent moments. It shows up in times where courage is called for. It is the thing that people admire and cherish about you the most. Do not hide it. Do not cover it up. Do not be ashamed of it. Bring it forth again and again, no matter what you fear the consequences or the judgment may be. And that light will make you proud because you'll be able to see it shining all around you. In the Gospel of Matthew, we read, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven." This is a positive thing to say when we're thinking of spirituality, as doing our spiritual practice, our meditation and prayer, and just building up that light so we can be it wherever it is. It's a trickier idea when we read this as a statement about resilience. When we read it as a statement of you're going through it right now. Someone doesn't know the truth of who you are. A circumstance is reflecting what's not good about you instead of what is. It's then that our light is most called to burn. It is there that we're called to be that resilience. Perhaps in all of the history since Jesus, the person who most embodied that Christ life was Mahatma Gandhi, a Hindu, who experienced the pain and the trauma of British colonialism and racism in South Africa and in India, and almost single-handedly ended it. How did he do it? He called it satyagraha. He read Jesus' Sermon on the Mount and was so inspired that he coined this term satyagraha that he defined as soul force, love force. And it's pretty cool to think of satyagraha as something that we can cultivate in our morning spiritual practice and bring throughout our day, but it's particularly challenging when someone isn't seeing the truth of who you are, isn't respecting your dignity as a human being, isn't holding a grander truth for you. Satyagraha is a response. It's a response to the suffering in the world. It's a response to the injustice in the world. It's a response to the confusion that we may see in the world. Gandhi says of it, Satyagraha is gentle. It never wounds. It must not be the result of anger or malice. It is never fussy, never impatient, never vociferous. It is the direct opposite of compulsion. It was conceived as a complete substitute for violence. It may not be showing up in a physical way, but somewhere, I'm going to guess, in your exterior reality or maybe in your psyche, there's some sort of conflict presenting itself. It may have to do with self-image. It may have to do with someone else's behavior. It may be a challenge that you're trying to look right in the eye. What does it mean to respond to that, not with the energy it's giving you, but to indeed take that energy in and transmute it into the way of the Spirit, into the way of love, into the way of the Christ? All common sense will say that's irrational. Don't do that. do it anyways. Do it anyways. When we learn to trust in that powerful satyagraha within ourselves, when we are aware of our love force, aware of our soul force, we can practice it with clarity and always trust its results. To close this morning with a prayerful word from our founder, Ernest Holmes. You are an eternal being now on the pathway of endless unfoldment. Never less, but always more yourself. Life is not static. It is forever dynamic, forever creating. Not something done and finished, but something alive, awake, and aware. There is something inside you that sings the song of eternity. Listen to it. There is an eternal springtime of your soul. Always rising, but never setting, is the sun of your destiny. So taking that into prayer, inviting any of our prayer practitioners who are here to stand and join us in consciousness. They are available for prayer after the service. Let us remember this morning that the sun never sets where it rises. Wherever one thing may seem to end, it begins anew somewhere else. What I affirm for each and every one of us who chooses to be a part of this prayer today is that there is a rising sun. Its glare may blind our past stories. It may tell us that who we used to be is no longer needed for who we are called to be now. But it will reveal to us this important understanding, the most sacred and important of all, that the universe knows what it is and it knows what it's doing. That the Spirit knows what it is and it knows what it's doing. It's us that forgets. It's ourselves that loses that sense of understanding. And yet there's not a thing we need do but to remember and allow that sun to rise in our lives, to shine in those dark places, to reveal to us newfound thoughts and understandings, to move from story into that grand narrative that reminds us that we are precious children of God, that is who we are here to be, that is who we are here to become, that is who we are here to assist others in realizing as well. So in knowledge of this truth, I just invite us to bring to mind any individual, any circumstance taking place, just to see it being surrounded by that love and light of the sacred divine. May we see that light upon ourselves as well, whether we know what we're asking for prayer for today or not. We allow that light to know what it is and know what it's doing to bring forth a new spring of life and of love. Accepting this sacred truth, we embrace, we answer the call of the sacred honor to be the truth of who we are, the best we can in all things, in all circumstances, in all relationships. We allow that creative authenticity to bring forth those new miracles, that new spring that our life is now open to in profound and wonderful ways. And so it is. Amen.
Thanks for listening to the Mile High Church podcast. This podcast is made possible by the generous contributions from listeners like you. To make a donation, please visit milehighchurch.org.